Welcome back. I'm here with Ben Shapiro in his great new book, How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. And we're working our way through what's going on today, which is covered in a very substantive, entertaining, and bracing way in this book. So, Ben, my question about the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party, through its history, has been more, let me put it this way, less pro-Americanism than anti-Americanism. Am I right about that?
I mean, historically speaking, that's certainly the case. And you can certainly see it probably most, not even in the Civil War period when the Democratic Party was pro the Confederacy, although that's pretty strong stuff. But in sort of its modern iteration, this obviously begins with the progressive movement, where you have leaders of the Democratic Party, like Woodrow Wilson, explicitly denouncing the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence and saying, you know, those were old definitions of liberty. Those were old definitions of rights. We need new definitions of rights and liberty, you know, things that come from the government, things that we can give to you. And anything that stands in the way of that, checks and balances, enumerated powers, all that has to go in pursuit of something more glorious and better. All you have to do is give me power and we'll give you back something that you will absolutely love. We'll give you entitlements. And that's been the movement of the Democratic Party over the course of the last century or more. You know, it's difficult, I think, to connect all aspects of the Democratic Party over time, obviously. But I think that the one thread that runs through at least the modern history of the Democratic Party is a desire for more power at the expense of a founding principle that says rights pre-exist government, that government was instituted to protect those rights, and that a government that violates those rights is not worthy of being upheld.
Woodrow Wilson was a out-of-the-closet racist, wasn't he? This is well known.
I mean, birth of a nation in the White House.
He resegregated the federal government. And when you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, it is openly anti-Semitic and supports the BDS movement. That's at least been part of its mission statement, has it not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the great semantic tricks that's been played right now is the overloading of the term Black Lives Matter. So they say Black Lives Matter, and you say, okay. And then they say, also, we have this whole agenda. You say, well, I don't agree with any of that agenda. They say, well, so you're saying Black lives don't matter? It's a pretty ridiculous linguistic trick.
But I'm specifically concerned about what I see happening in the country, and particularly crystallized in the Democrat Party. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has endorsed Ilhan Omar in the Democrat primary in Minneapolis, running against somebody who is specifically challenged her and others on her anti-Semitism. Nancy Pelosi endorses her. Nancy Pelosi brings a resolution to the floor about a year ago, waters it down, even though it's aimed at Omar and her persistent anti-Semitic statements, and anti-American statements, too. The Democrat Party, as an institution, has not been speaking out against anti-Semitism. Of course, it hasn't been speaking out against the riots or anything of the sort. Do you see this as a growing problem in the Democrat Party, and hence a growing problem in America?
It's a massive problem inside the Democratic Party. And the reason anti-Semitism is allowed is because it fits in with the broader overall vision of the Democratic Party at this point, which is that all of America is hierarchies of power, and that the only people who are victims in America are people who are part of historically marginalized groups, not people who are members of historically marginalized groups who may actually be victims of anti-Semitism, for example, because Jews are just too prosperous. Jews don't count as a minority group anymore because Jews are too economically sufficient, they're too economically advanced, too well educated, so they just don't count as a minority anymore. You've seen the same thing with Asians, right? Asians are now discriminated against at Harvard and not allowed in because they're no longer a victimized minority. And so what the left has done is this ugly trick where they basically say that you are only perceived as a victim if you're a member of a group that is not only historically marginalized, but today is less successful than other groups. And this leads to the bizarre situation where if you are a member of one of those victim groups and you target another member of a historically marginalized group, that's perfectly okay. That's not a problem. Those are people in power. Right? As soon as the intersectionality Olympics begins and the people who are perceived as part of the successful in the United States are attacked, it doesn't matter what their group identity is. They're part of the successful and they're fair game.
You have true bigots and anti-Semites in the Democrat Party. From my perspective, you have Tlaib, some of the things that she has said. I said Omar, there are others. In the Republican Party, they rejected David Duke, or they vote down a Steve King. The Democrat Party writes letters to the Prime Minister of Israel and threatens the Prime Minister of Israel if they have right to return in some of the sovereign parts of ancient Israel. They don't write letters to the Palestinians. They don't write letters to Abbas. They don't write letters to Hamas. And they're perfectly happy, but they campaign on this, whereas the Republicans wrote a letter to the Prime Minister endorsing his position. Are we seeing a realignment in this country, and based in part on the base of the Democrat Party moving harder and harder toward the Marxist left, which is anti-Semitic?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the realignment has already happened. I think that it's been in play for a long time, certainly since the Obama era and beyond. It's just, again, kind of bursting into full flowering right now. And a large part of that is because President Trump is so overtly pro-Israel, and this has driven the left to embrace anything that Trump dislikes. So the left will now embrace rioting and looting. They will embrace open hatred for Israel. Trump is the great catalyst. He's the great catalyst for all sort of polarization in the country, not through his own fault in cases like this, but simply because the left despises the man so much.
Well, Ben, you've written a great book, How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. I want to encourage people to get a copy of it. It's very, very important right now that people read this and understand it and act on it. Good luck. Take care. We'll be right back.